Good morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Wednesday, December 18th, 2019, better known as National Signing Day. I am Dave Biddle. Very happy to be joined by the People's Champ, Matt Baxendell. Bax, let's get right into it. They're going to sign, the Buckeyes will sign at least 23, hopefully 24 today. They are waiting on Clark Phillips, who will make his announcement tomorrow between Ohio State and Utah. They're waiting on Cam Martinez, who's now going to wait probably till February, what is now the late signing period. And, of course, they're waiting for quarterback CJ Stroud, who will announce today at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPNU. Again, 12:30 Eastern Time, ESPNU. And then Ryan Day will meet with the media at 1 o'clock here in Columbus. That schedule works out pretty well. Stroud makes his announcement at 12:30, Ryan Day at 1 o'clock. That sounds good. But, Bax, let's start with CJ Stroud, then we'll work back to Clark Phillips and Cam Martinez. It sounds good for CJ Stroud. There's a little drama today, but I feel like Stroud's going to be a Buckeye. Where are you at?
Yeah, I think this is the timing of the way this has ended makes me very confident he's going to end up in scarlet and gray. Let's look at it. His last in-home was with Ryan Day. Then he ended up coming to campus right on the heels of that. All that stuff lines up really nicely for OSU to have had the last shot, have made their argument for him. And candidly, if you're looking at the three programs he's a finalist with, you've got that school up north, you've got Georgia, and you've got Ohio State. Who in the world would pick the other two over OSU based on recent quarterback development? I mean, just look at Justin Fields. He went to Georgia. He got stuck behind a guy in Jake Fromm who is the NFL scouts seem to think is good, but anybody who watches college football will tell you he's not. And Fields comes to Ohio State and throws 40 touchdowns against one interception. I know which offense is more exciting. I know which head coach is more dynamic. And by the way, I know where I'm going to have just as much opportunity as I will anywhere else, and that's at Ohio State. That school up north is losing Shea Patterson, so you've likely got McCaffrey as the guy taking over there next year. Fromm at this point, look, Georgia's going to open up next year too. They've got a couple guys on the roster. If Stroud really thinks he's going to start as a true freshman, maybe that's your pitch for those places. But here, you have 1 year till Justin Fields is gone, and then you're going to be competing for the starting job with your classmate in Jack Miller and maybe some other true freshman in Kyle McCord in a year from now. So to me, Stroud coming to Ohio State makes a world of sense. There's no geographic constraints that would worry you because he's a California kid coming east. I think Stroud's a Buckeye. And the good news is we're going to find out very shortly. And by the way, Ryan Day wouldn't have scheduled his press conference for immediately after Stroud's announcement if he wasn't extremely confident that he was going to go OSU's way. Because otherwise, if this drags out and then he picks Georgia and Ryan Day is just walking on stage, Ryan Day's going to have to answer a lot of awkward questions. So I assume OSU thinks he's in as well.
All right, Cam Martinez is looking at Northwestern now, and they're promising him, you can do this and that. You can play on both sides of the ball, and, good on them. I think Cam Martinez, even though his rating has gone up a lot, I still think he's underrated. I love his film. And obviously he was close with Jeff Haffley, and he feels like Haffley, had a role for him. But, Ryan Day's not going to change that. Whoever he brings in, I'm sure is going to have the same vision for Cam Martinez. What do you think is going to happen with Cam Martinez? Do you think he just has cold feet here and he's going to be a Buckeye in the end, or are you concerned the Buckeyes are going to miss out on him?
Well, he's not an early enrollee. And if he's not an early enrollee, isn't the prudent decision to wait and make sure you have all the answers you need on your future? I don't necessarily blame him, particularly because he was told by Jeff Haffley how he was going to be utilized. Haffley doesn't recruit Michigan, but Haffley came in and had a personal touch on Cam Martinez that Martinez clearly appreciated. Truth is, Bill Green was saying this, and condolences to Bank, by the way, on the passing of his mom. But he was saying last week or earlier this week that he was worried about Cam Martinez and Northwestern because Northwestern was selling him on being able to play both ways, and that OSU he was going to get lost in the shuffle. So Martinez is waiting to find out who the new coach is. And look, if that's my kid, and I've said this in the past, we all want every recruit that Ohio State wants to be a Buckeye and quit having cold feet, yada, 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 yada. But if that's my kid and he's not trying to enroll in the first week of January, I'm probably telling him, hey, let's just wait and see. Make sure you're comfortable with the new guy who's coming in, and make sure that it is absolutely the right choice for you in a class where there's going to be 5 defensive backs, in a class where there's 4 elite receivers, you know? He's a kid who could get lost in the shuffle with all that other talent coming in unless there's a clear plan for him like there clearly was with Jeff Haffley. I don't think he wants to decommit. I think he's just being prudent, and I can't judge the kid for that. In fact, it's kind of smart. If Ohio State brings in a defensive coordinator who Martinez isn't comfortable with, or kind of gives him a milquetoast kind of answer, then maybe he's not going to come here. Maybe he's going to say, look, I can go to Northwestern and be a stud right away. I know that's not the answer that everybody necessarily wants, but it's more than just, hey, sign with Ohio State, recruit. And I think he's a great recruit. I think he could be one of the gems of this class. I love that a kid from Michigan's not considering any of the Michigan schools and is considering OSU. But if he's not enrolling early, what's the rush? That's kind of the bottom line here. I still think Ohio State has a fantastic chance to land him. And if this was the rules that we had just 3 years ago, this wouldn't be a debate. We'd be saying, okay, well, you know, we'll just got to re-solidify Martinez before February. But with everybody signing early now, you know, it's a whole different ballgame. The downside of these late waivers that you're seeing, like with Phillips and Martinez, is that you have a lot more, I don't know, scraps, I guess, left over. I hate to use the word scraps. Good news that the Michigan board covered themselves in glory with the offensive line scraps thread a few years ago. But you don't have as many flip targets because a lot of kids are locked in already. It's not like Urban used to do where he was like, okay, let's see, I'm going to flip you now, right? Ohio State's targets are more limited if some of your wavering guys end up going elsewhere after the early signing period or surprising you like Clark Phillips may. So that's the downside here, but I do think Ohio State has a great chance of keeping Cam Martinez.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think in the end he will be in this class, and I think you're right. I mean, it's prudent what he's doing, just taking his time. He's not going to enroll early anyway. Make sure he likes the new defensive coordinator. I still think he'll be a Buckeye. Clark Phillips, I don't know where I come down on this, Bax. I'm curious to get your take on this. Another guy that loves Jeff Haffley, and now I guess he always kind of liked Utah. Clark Phillips did, and then Ohio State came in and just won him over. And he's another guy I think just kind of wants to see who the new defensive coordinator is. I have a feeling Ryan Day knows exactly who it is, and he's telling recruits, obviously off the record, who it's going to be. That's just my take. I bet Clark Phillips knows. Clark Phillips is going to make his announcement tomorrow. It's his birthday, so we have a little drama tomorrow. Where do you come down on this? What do you think Clark Phillips is going to do tomorrow?
I think Clark Phillips is going to be a Buckeye, and here's why. Maybe I'm being that biased guy I just said not to be when you're talking about recruiting, but in no way, shape, or form does Utah compare to Ohio State when it comes to the development of defensive backs and overall sending guys to the league. Utah's a fine program. We saw them this year win the Pac-12 South. But it's not Ohio State when it comes to terms of national exposure, development, and competition to be an elite-level defensive back. Look at Ohio State's current backfield. You've got Sean Wade, Damon Arnett, and Jeff Okudah, all of which will be drafted, in the case of 2 of those guys, likely in the first round. Utah doesn't have that. To me, it's like saying, well, I could go to this SAT prep course that's run by a bunch of professors who wrote the SAT exam, or I could go to the SAT prep class that's being run by the interns at the state college down the road. Of course you're going to go to the guys who are way more qualified for your end game. And I think Phillips got nervous because he liked Haffley a lot, and Haffley was the dominant reason why he came to OSU. I think this is a little bit of a lesson learned about how, guess what, if you have elite coaches, sometimes they're going to move on. And I think Phillips felt like he should have given Utah a shot once Haffley wasn't there. But I think Phillips came out of the visit with Utah high as a kite on the experience that he had. And like all recruits, recency bias is a thing. They probably rolled out the red carpet for him. And as he's gotten home and he's had time to talk to OSU, I think he's calmed down and gotten a little more rational about it. It's not like Utah's exactly close for him either, right? Yes, it's theoretically closer, but it's not like his parents are going to get in a car and drive up to Salt Lake City. he's still a long way from freaking Utah. So the geographic proximity here, it's not like USC's coming in or something, and he's considering them. I think that at the end of the day, this is sort of an emotional decision for a kid who is jamming a lot in at the last minute to something he thought was set. And I also think, like you, Dave, Ryan Day knows exactly what's going on here. And there are certain restrictions on why it can't be made public before this early signing day. I think Ryan Day is telling these recruits what his plan is. And in the end of the day, I think Clark Phillips is going to be a Buckeye. Because it purely doesn't make sense if he chose to do something else, like go to Utah. It's not like it's USC. It's not like it's Alabama. It's not like it's Oklahoma. It's not like it's an elite program. And it's not like it's a proximate thing. I know a lot of people are comparing this to Darnay Holmes a few years ago, where everybody was shocked that he went to a program that was relatively at a bum level like UCLA compared to OSU. And by the way, that's a kid I think who probably would tell you he made the wrong choice, considering that he's, I believe, transferring after 3 years. So I think Clark Phillips is going to end up being a Buckeye because too many things make sense for him to stay with his Ohio State commitment versus flipping to a frankly lesser program.
Let's focus on the guys that we know are going to sign in this class. What a class this is. Number 4 class in the country, according to the 24/7 Sports Composite. At least 23 will sign today. Like we said, could be 24, probably will be 24 with CJ Stroud. I mean, obviously starting right at the top backs, the best wide receiver class, perhaps, we'll see how it pans out, but perhaps the Buckeyes have ever signed. 4 wide receivers in this class. We're talking 4 of the top 15 wide receivers in the country, including the number 1 wide receiver in the nation, Julian Fleming. What a wide receiver class. Great job by Brian Hartline.
Yeah, this is an unreal receiver class. It's like, this is like video game recruiting. And I love to make this comparison because normally we're like, dude, this isn't the old NCAA video games where you pick all the 5 stars and you put all your recruiting minutes on them and you win them because you're Ohio State, right? No, it doesn't normally work like that. You don't normally go to the Washington State and Texas and, Penn State country, Pennsylvania, and steal the best kids from underneath all those places' noses. But that's what OSU's done with these kids. I mean, you have 4 guys in the top or 15, and all of them look like you could be elite impact guys. And by the way, you know what else I really love about it is look at the way that some of them have risen in the rankings, even after their lofty rankings initially. Jackson Smith-Njigba is, and forgive me if I mispronounce his name, I'll get it right once he gets on campus, but he was a kid who was, barely around the top 100. Now he's the last kid who's not a 5-star. I mean, this is a kid who, if you watched his video from the playoffs, was insane. He went from, in my mind, a really good prospect to every bit the level of Fleming and Scott. And, nobody's even talking about Mookie Cooper because of what happened with his high school this year. Okay, cool. Get him on campus early. Get him into the system. Let's go. This wide receiver class is off the charts good. And honestly, you have to be so impressed with Hartline. There's a guy who is worth his weight in gold, that's for sure. Because at this point, Hartline is rapidly shaping up to be the best wide receiver coach in America.
And it's great. He's the number 1 recruiter in the country, according to 24/7 Sports. I love that. Number 3 is Jeff Haffley. It's too bad they're losing Haffley, but I get it. I guess I was hoping he'd stay for 1 more year, but I get it. Just going down this class again. So wide receiver is obviously the premier position in this class. Not too far behind Bax's offensive line. I mean, they did a great job with offensive linemen in this class. They're signing 6 of them, including the number 1 offensive lineman in the nation, number 1 offensive tackle, Paris Johnson. What a great O-line class. Quantity and quality with 6 of them.
This is an interesting O-line class because it reminds me a little bit of the Meyer approach, but it's combined with the Tressel approach because you have a couple Ohio guys that if you look them just by ranking, they wouldn't normally be the kids OSU would look at, right? But look at some of the Ohio, quote, projects that Tressel brought in over the years, and they turned out to be pretty darn good. People forget Nick Mangold was a 2-star recruit. So I love that they went for some of the elite level guys. Obviously, a guy like Paris Johnson in your backyard is one you just can't turn down, plain and simple. But, Greg Studrawa must have seen something in some of these guys that maybe aren't considered to be composite 4-stars here in Ohio that led him to go after them early. I know there's a lot of talk about Trey LaRue because Purdue was really hard on him and OSU had to make a decision early, and they did. And he's the lowest rated kid that's a position player in this class. But we have a track record with offensive linemen of some of them take a little while to develop from Ohio, and they turn out to be pretty darn good players. And when you needed numbers, it's okay to reach in a year like this, I guess. And, if that sounds like we're justifying what they did, then so be it. But Stud knew he needed kids in this class. We needed bodies in this offensive line class, plain and simple. And they went out and they got some elite-level kids, the Johnsons and Whipplers of the world, right? But they also went out and they got some kids from Ohio that, hey, they may turn out to be pretty darn good football players too. It's not like we haven't found very good results with Ohio 3-stars in the past. So I love the sheer numbers in this class. I think that's a good thing for the offensive line. But, this has been a good bounce-back year for Greg Studrawa. We talked about how Brian Hartline was having one of the best years we could imagine in recruiting, and that's certainly been the case, no question about it. Studrawa's sort of redeemed himself a little bit this year, not just with the performance of the team on the field, but also with his performance in recruitment. I mean, if some of these guys turn out to be better players maybe than people expected, if Jacob James or Trey LaRue come out and end up being elite-level kids and exceed their recruiting expectations, it's only a notch in his cap. And I think that's a really good thing. But I want to ask you a question, Dave, because there's one kid in this class that really has me excited, and I think that the coaching staff is the same way. And I'm really excited about Mitchell Melton. I think this guy could turn out to be an absolute stud who's way underrated. If you're telling me there's 18 better players in the state of Maryland after watching that kid, I don't know what the state of Maryland's producing this year.
And they need pass rushers, and he can provide that. He can do a lot of stuff out there. I agree with you. He's definitely underrated, and I love that they're staying. I mean, they've had such good luck with recruiting the DMV. They have to keep doing that. Going back to offensive line just for a second, Jacob James is a guy I think is entirely underrated. He is 53rd at his position in the country, an offensive guard, 834 overall prospect in the country, 27th player in Ohio. I mean, he's from a really good program, Cincinnati Elder. I watched his film. I mean, this guy, he's physical. I really like Jacob James. I think he's underrated. Now, obviously, Trey LaRue is a guy that they're taking just because of size. They're taking a chance on him, as you mentioned, 6'8", 355, might be even bigger than that now. But I just want to remind everybody, the lowest-ranked member of last year's class, he only signed 17 kids, but the lowest-ranked member of last year's class for the Buckeyes, DeJuan Jones, all 6'9", 360 of him, and he is playing as a true freshman and might be a starter next year, so you just never know. But, yeah, man, I agree with you about Mitchell Melton. I'm excited about him, too. He's one of these guys that's definitely underrated. To close the show, let's talk about running backs. I know a lot of fans are going to say, this running back class with just Mayan Williams, it's substandard. I get that. If you just look at they're only going to sign one. He's a 3-star. I get it. That's not the standard at Ohio State. But I like Mayan Williams, and they have to get a couple really good backs in their 2021 class. There's no doubt about that. I also think backs it helps that they got Master Teague for at least another year. Marcus Crowley was looking good before the injury. Steele Chambers looks like he's pretty good. Just your thoughts on Mayan Williams in this class and, the fact that a lot of fans might be disappointed he's the only running back in this class.
Well, we wanted, obviously, some other guys. Ohio State had a commitment from Bijan Robinson, and that didn't pan out the way that we quite had hoped. But at the end of the day, there's nothing you can do about it when the guy's family decides he has to stay closer to home and he follows their wishes. You can't make him magically live not in Arizona, right? So I think it was an interesting year for running back recruiting. In between Jalen Knighton and Bijan Robinson, it looked like it was going to be an absolute stud kind of year. That didn't end up panning out. And Mayan Williams was a harder get than Ohio State probably you'd think would have had with him. He's a kid who he had very strong ties to Iowa State, loved Matt Campbell, was kind of under the radar in recruiting. OSU had to do some work to get this kid, right? And that's after they had passed on some other kids in the state, Michael Drennan and that group, DeMontre Trainum. So Ohio State clearly preferred him over those higher-rated guys. There's certainly something there. And we talk about Ohio 3-stars. I remember a class at Ohio State's 3 lowest-rated kids from the state of Ohio. Under Urban Meyer were guys by the name of Chris Worley, Darren Lee, and Tracy Sprinkle. That was a pretty good set of Ohio 3-stars in that class. And when you have as much elite talent coming in from around the country, it's not a bad idea to mine the state of Ohio a little bit, especially in Ryan Day's first year. There's another thing I think that nobody's really talked about. Like, remember when Urban came in and everybody was like, well, are you going to still take kids from Ohio? I mean, are you just going to go national? Is everybody going to be from Florida? And Urban had to, convince people that he did like Ohio football. He did care about the Ohio recruits. Hey, he was going to take the best kids in Ohio still, right? And Ryan Day, I think, ingratiated himself a little bit more with these Ohio coaches in his first class by taking some of these, quote, lower-rated guys. A guy like Ty Hamilton, well, guess what? Sure, he's a lower 3-star, like his brother was, who's turned out to be a stud for Ohio State. You think you don't have a good read on who Ty Hamilton is, considering his older brother's in the program? There's a lot of these lower 3-star guys that, guess what? In a lot of other teams' classes that just don't recruit at the absolute elite Death Star level that Ohio State has been since the arrival of Urban Meyer, would be totally normal, acceptable kids to have in this class that we'd be talking about. It's been a while since we've gone, man, I think this guy's way better than his ratings, because almost everybody Ohio State signs is nearly a 4-star or above. So I think Ryan Day strategically went in here to make sure Ohio coaches understood that Ohio State still cares about Ohio. And that's a good thing. That's definitely not a problem. So I think this is the way to go. And you have to be really, I think proud's the way to describe Ryan Day's first class. And to make everybody else feel better about running backs, look, we didn't get the guys we wanted this year. But Ohio State's in heavy on some big-time players next year. You got Donovan Edwards up in Michigan, who's giving Ohio State a very strong look. You got Corey Kiner, who's an Ohio guy down at Roger Bacon in Cincinnati, which, for whatever reason, Ryan Day's managed to get 6 out of 8 kids from the Cincinnati area this year from the Ohioans we're getting. That's the polar opposite of the way it usually seems to be. So that's another kid Ohio State's in and hot and heavy on. So between Edwards and Kiner, you got 2 local guys that are pretty high on Ohio State next year that are high-end running back recruits. And that's a good thing. And I think you're going to see next year they're going to land some high-level running back kids. And in the end, this has been a great class for Ohio State. And for Ryan Day, I think the one answer we had to have from him this year was, how does he recruit? Year one has been an unbridled success. And, adding a guy like Stroud at the end, holding on to Clark Phillips, eventually relanding Cam Martinez, that's fantastic. So, great start in class, and let's see all those signatures come in today on that fax machine.
Great stuff from the People's Champ, Matt Baxendell. Keep it locked to Bucknuts all day, Bucknutters. We're going to have updates all day on the guys that have signed. We have a recruiting tracker on the site right now. You can see who is already signed. Again, CJ Stroud will make his announcement at 12:30, and we will meet with Ryan Day at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center just past 1 p.m., or maybe right at 1 p.m. today, so we'll have full coverage of that. So keep it locked to Bucknuts for all of your National Signing Day coverage. Thanks again to the People's Champ, Matt Baxendell, and thank you to all listeners out there for tuning into the show. I really appreciate it. Hope everyone has a great National Signing Day. Let's hear that Buckeye swag, best damn band in the land.